15-year-old girl didn't return home after meeting some friends in town one night. The horrifying ordeal that followed her disappearance would be one to shock the nation. Charlene Downs was a 14-year-old girl born on the 25th of March 1989. Charlene lived in Blackpool, England, with her parents Karen and Robert and her 3 siblings. Charlene appeared to have been a normal, happy girl who was quite mischievous at school, which led her to be expelled for misbehaving. However, on Saturday the 1st of November 2003, when Charlene was 14 years old, she would leave home never to be seen again. At around 6:45 PM, Charlene and her sister Rebecca were out in town when they bumped into their mother, who was handing out leaflets for the local takeaway shops. Their mother asked the two what their plans for the evening were. Rebecca said she was going straight home after this, and Charlene told her mother she was going to wait for her 2 friends to get the bus into town and spend some time with them. Karen agreed and reminded Charlene that she had to be home by 10 PM. Charlene waited with her mum until her 2 friends arrived on the bus. She gave her mum a kiss and a cuddle goodbye and went off with her friends into town. This was the last time Karen would ever see Charlene. Karen returned home that night at 10 PM after work expecting to see Charlene, but she wasn't home yet. Karen and Robert were not too worried at first, as Charlene did sometimes stay out later than she's supposed to. However, hours passed and she still wasn't home. Her parents tried to call Charlene, but she wasn't answering. Karen and Robert got increasingly worried, and Robert decided to go on his bike around the town in hopes he may find his daughter or the people she was with, but there was no sign of her anywhere. The pair calmed themselves down and thought maybe Charlene had stayed over at a friend's house and not told them. They both went to bed and expected Charlene to arrive home the next morning. However, Sunday morning came and she still hadn't returned home. A few hours passed and Karen got a gut feeling that her daughter wasn't coming home.
I said, she's not home. I said, she's always home. There's something wrong. I just had a feeling.
Karen and Robert drove to every one of her friends' houses to ask if Charlene had stayed the night. The 2 girls Charlene was last seen with told Karen and Robert that they left her by herself last night on the pier at 9:30 PM so they could go back and babysit. None of her other friends had seen her either. Karen and Robert rang the police and told them that their 14-year-old daughter had been missing for nearly 24 hours. But the police told them they could not report her missing until 48 hours after she was last seen. Karen and Robert were nervously waiting, hoping that she would just walk back through the front door, but she never did. Finally, on Monday, the police came to Robert and Karen's house to file a missing persons report. The police took a description and asked for photos of Charlene to help in the investigation, and then the police started door-to-door inquiries. Charlene was due to start school on the Tuesday after previously being expelled. Charlene really enjoyed the social aspect of school and was excited about starting fresh on Tuesday. However, she didn't turn up for school either. At this time, Charlene's mother, Karen, knew something was seriously wrong. Weeks passed, and despite the police's efforts, there was no new information about the disappearance of Charlene Downs. Police received many new leads about the possible sightings of the girl, and they were all looked into. However, none of them were actually Charlene. Karen noticed that none of the newspapers were showing or telling the story of Charlene's disappearance, which limited exposure to the case, preventing any potential witnesses coming forward with information sooner. The newspapers told Karen that the police had told them that Charlene's disappearance was just a runaway case. The police never told Karen or any of Charlene's family that they believed Charlene had run away.
I said, Charlene has not run away. She had no reason to run away. There'd been no argument. There'd been nothing. You know, she wasn't unhappy.
Eventually, Charlene's case was broadcasted on most news channels and newspapers, leading to more people coming forward with possible sightings and information. Police also looked into every lead, however none of them proved to be significant. 3 years passed without any more information when suddenly Karen was asked to go for a meeting at the police station.
They sat us down and he said, I've got you down here. He said, I've got some news, terrible news for you. I said, what news? He gave us a brew. I'll never forget it. I was drinking a cup of coffee at the time. He said, we believe Charlene's been murdered. I literally dropped the hot coffee into my lap. Went, what? Murdered? What do you mean murdered? Where is she? Where's her body? Where is she? If she's been murdered, where is she? Why have you not told me? I literally dropped my coffee into my lap. And I didn't even, it was scalding hot and I didn't even feel it. You know what I mean? And he said, we're 99.9% certain that she's been murdered. They said,
actually his words,
99.9%. Yeah, they were his words. I will never forget those words as long as I live. And he said, we're actually going today to arrest the people concerned.
Two people were arrested, 29-year-old Ayad Albatiki and his business partner, Mohammed Raveshi. Ayad Albatiki was the owner of Funny Boys, a fast food outlet, and he was arrested on suspicion of murder. His business partner, Mohammed Raveshi, was charged with the disposing of a body. The police informed Charlene's family of the arrest, but didn't tell the family why they arrested them. A week later, Robert received a phone call from a relative crying down the phone after reading a newspaper story about Charlene.
And she said, I need to tell you something. And he said, whatever's the matter? She said, are you sitting down? She said, have you got the Metro? I went, no. She said, have you read what's in it? Charlene's body has been cut up into kebabs. Well, I tell you what, I just went, what?
So
what?
The police had told the press that before they told you?
Yeah. They'd let that leak to the press before I even knew about that.
The police's theory was that the two men killed Charlene, and to dispose of her body, the men cut her up, fed her body through a meat grinder, cooked her and sold her as kebab meat from their takeaway shop. The men were taken to trial in the May of 2007. The reason for the theory and the main piece of evidence was a secret audio recording of the two men talking. The police received information from one of the suspect's brothers. He told police he overheard his brother and his brother's business partner bragging about killing and disposing of a little girl's body. The police bugged the men's homes, cars and workplace in hopes to catch them talking about the murder to use as evidence. Allegedly, in the tape recordings, Ayad Albatiki admits to having sex with Charlene, killing her and then putting her dead body in the meat grinder and selling her as kebab meat. He also allegedly said in another tape recording, I killed her, I killed a girl, I was just angry. However, during the tape recordings, none of the men said Charlene's name. Because of this, it is only speculated that it could be linked to Charlene's disappearance. After police interviewed over 3,000 people, they became aware of a large child grooming gang being run in local takeaways, including the takeaway the two men owned. Some owners and workers of these takeaways were grooming approximately 60 young girls from the age of 11 to 15. These people would give the young girls alcohol, cigarettes and free food in return for sexual favours. It became apparent that Charlene was being groomed and exploited by these men for a year before she went missing. The court case came to a hung jury, meaning the jury couldn't all find the two men either guilty or not guilty. Half of the jury thought the men were guilty, however the other half didn't think there was enough evidence. This meant both the men were released back into society. After the men were released, it became apparent that a man on the jury was friends with one of the defendants, which is against court rules. Also, one of the defendant's brothers was apparently following and threatening members of the jury. Because of this, a retrial was ordered for April 2008. However, the prosecution found flaws in the transcription of the audio tapes. A transcription in this case was the audio recordings being typed into text form to be read and used as evidence. It was found that the person who transcribed the audio recordings may have been biased. This meant the tapes could not be used in trial, and they were one of the only things that pointed towards the men being guilty of Charlene's murder. Without any more evidence, the men couldn't be retried and the case was dropped. Both men were given £250,000 each for compensation of being falsely accused. In April 2008, the week after the attempt at retrial failed, Karen stabbed her husband during an argument. The wounds were minor and he declined to press charges, saying that she was maddened with the worry and frustration. It also became apparent that Charlene's house was being frequently visited by men with rape and assault convictions. At the time of Charlene's disappearance, there was a man staying in the house who was on bail for sexual offences. On the 1st of August 2017, police arrested a 51-year-old man who lived in Blackpool at the time of Charlene's disappearance on suspicion of murder. The police found it suspicious that he owned a cafe in Blackpool, and around the time of Charlene's disappearance he randomly abandoned his business and moved to a different city. However, the man was released 2 days later as he had no evidence to legally hold him for any longer. This case remains unsolved to this day. There's many people I believe could have been responsible for her disappearance. Give your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Thanks for watching.
We still got past Wednesday, this Utah man fatally shot his family of 7 and then turned the gun on himself. Michael Haight, his wife, his 5 children, and his mother-in-law were all living in their home in a small town in Utah. It was about 180 miles from Las Vegas. Tasha filed a divorce petition in late December, and then her mother moved into the home with them to provide support. The children were identified by their ages and genders: 17-year-old female, 12-year-old female, 7-year-old female, 7-year-old male, and 4-year-old male. What's weird about this is that Tuesday night, Tasha and her daughter went to an event that was going on at their church, and then the next morning she had a scheduled appointment to meet with some unidentified person. We don't know what the appointment was for. We don't know who this person was. However, when Tasha did not show up to this appointment, that person immediately called in for a welfare check, which is strange to me. That tells me that this person knew something and was extremely scared for her after she just did not show up that morning. A missing person report was filed with Cedar City, and then when they learned that they lived in a different town, they went ahead and just moved it over to the local police department, which then turned into a search for the entire family. The police department went up to their home and decided to go in, and that's whenever they walked in on a very gruesome scene. Online, they're saying that the family is a very religious Mormon family, and unfortunately, I think this was a situation of, if you're leaving me, I'm gonna kill you all so we can all be together in heaven. It's truly horrifying. No one in this family had criminal backgrounds. However, the police did have interactions with them in the past. They would not say what for, but there was some sort of investigation going on a few years ago. I'm going to assume that it was probably something that had to do with domestic violence.